I think we're live. So you
All
may
right,
proceed.
perfect. Very good, thank you. Well, it is 5:03, so I'm going to call us to order for the May regular meeting of the Altadena Library District Board of Trustees. And welcome everybody, good to see everybody. We will start as always with our roll call. Trustee Andrews.
Here.
Trustee Capel.
Here.
Trustee Cervantes.
Here.
Trustee Wilkerson.
I'm here.
Perfect, and I'm here as well. Any requests to reorder or adjust any agenda items? Okay, hearing none, then I will ask for a motion to adopt the agenda.
I'll move.
Okay, thank you. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All right, motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? All right, and then we will do roll call vote. Trustee Andrews.
Aye.
Trustee Capel.
Aye.
Thank you. Trustee Cervantes.
Aye.
Trustee Wilkerson.
Aye.
And I vote for me, so that's good to go. Thank you so much. And Diego informs me that as of now, we have no public comment on any non-agenda items, but as always, we'll be pretty flexible with that. So if something comes in later, we can address it at that point. So that brings us to our consent calendar. The consent calendar this month includes the meetings from our regular, includes the minutes from our regular meeting in April, which appear on pages 3 through 7 of your board package. So at this time, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Okay, perfect. I hear a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion on this item? All right, hearing none, we'll proceed to a vote. Trustee Andrews.
Aye.
Trustee Capel.
Aye.
Trustee Cervantes.
Aye.
Trustee Wilkerson.
Aye.
And an I vote for me. When we do this in person, guys, and we can just say aye and raise our hands, that's gonna be fun. Although I won't get to go through your names each time. So you win some, you lose some. All right. So we come now, of course, to our departmental updates. So first we have our update reports by department, which appear beginning on page 8 in your board package. Nikki, would you like to take us through that or hand it to various folks to do that? Is there anything that you wanted to, okay, that's fine. I didn't know if there was anything you wanted to flag particularly, or we can just open up the floor for any comments or, okay, perfect. So any comments or questions or feedback on anything from the departmental reports? Again, that's pages 8 through 18 of your board package. Rushmore, please go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick thank you for once again, just a very robust summary of all the great activities you are producing and providing to the constituents of Altadena. Just amazing with a small budget that we're going to be discussing later, the amount of services you're able to provide and getting people together. So I really appreciate that.
All right, thank you. Terry, please.
And just a comment from me about the seed library. And I didn't know you could become a master gardener through UC Cooperative Extension Program. So thanks for sharing that. My wife is a very avid and budding, no pun intended, gardener. So I'm going to direct her to that. And the other thing is I noticed there were several points in here where folks were talking about grants that they received or are about to receive, large and small. And as always, I really appreciate the fact that the staff is getting out after some of these grant opportunities and getting that money into our coffers. So thanks for that. And then a final thing, I'll be done. I was impressed with the outreach. This is in the very first report we have here. The outreach to the schools locally, because I know it's been a struggle for them. And these individual stories about outreach to Jackson Elementary and to 5 Acres, and Elliott was involved and so on. I really think that's terrific. So thank you for that.
All right, thank you. Any other comments? Or Jason, go ahead, please.
I mean, the obvious one to me is I love seeing the pictures of the more complete opening of both libraries. That's awesome to see. I know the community is excited about that. And then, too much to comment on as usual, but I think the other great thing is to see, I think we might need to add to the name of the Bob Lucas branch. It's becoming more of a greenhouse these days with all of the additional gardens, and now there's a community garden, like all this great stuff is going on. So, thanks to all the staff and volunteers that continue to play a role in that as well.
All right, thank you so much.
Can I say,
Please.
this is Camila. I can't see where it is in the package at the moment, but I am looking forward to the really robust summer reading program for the kids. I had the opportunity to be in the library and get one of the physical calendars, and then I saw it in the report, and I'm really looking forward to it. It looks really exciting, and I wanted to, just thank the staff for putting a lot of thought into that.
Thank you so much for that. And I can't think of a better transition into our next item, which is a special presentation on our summer reading program. So I certainly echo Camila's excitement, and we're going to hear more about it from Mi-Ling. So Mi-Ling, take it away.
Sure. Let me pull this up really quick. All right. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the teen and children's programs for summer at the library this year. So we are transitioning away from calling it summer reading and using the term OurSummer, just to make it a little more inclusive, bring in the community, and have our focus not just be on reading, but be on other activities and things that you can do during the summer. And our general theme is reading colors your world. So there'll be a lot of colors, things about coloring and things. So for the children's, there's sort of three elements. We have our kits, which we did something similar last year, a Beanstack or badge book challenge, and programming, both virtual and in person. The kits are these boxes that we've put together, and they include materials to create some suggested crafts. The Youth and Family Services team has recorded some videos of some fun crafts that kids can do using the materials we provide. However, they are welcome to make whatever they want with anything in the box. We also include age range appropriate books. And these badge books that I'll talk a little bit later about for tracking reading and other fun activities, as well as some sidewalk chalk to help them color their worlds. Okay, so the badge book, we have our Beanstack, which we've used before. It's our online challenge program that we use during the summers and for 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten. So we got these badge books from actually the Beanstack company, and it goes along with the online program. So people can either participate online, on paper, both, however works best for them. We have some suggested activities that people can do if they want to. However, they are welcome to make their own goals and just use it however works best. So we're recording days that people read or kids read. So they just track how many days they read. And to actually earn some badges, we have just some goals for how many days or how many activities they complete. So you actually complete the challenge by earning at least 5 badges, and an official completion will give you an extra drawing spot in our final drawing for the summer. As you can see, we have a lot of events planned, some virtual and some in person. Our summer program is going to run June 5th through July 31st. And we're going to kick off and end with some live performances. So we're starting with Christopher T. Magician, who's going to do a live performance on the front lawn of our main library. It's kind of a side lawn, but it's next to the bridge there. And then at the end of the summer, we will have Chaz Ross come and help us kind of use our bodies and learn how to drum and discover our universal rhythm with drumming. We have some programs that will be played on using Nintendo Switch online. Helen Kate is hosting an Animal Crossing hour and a Mario Kart tournaments every week. And we will have Switches available for both checkout in our library of things and to be able to play in the library in the teen area once we're a little bit more open. We have family story time in the library or outside of the main library. And then Diana is going to take our Curiosity Connection, our mobile library, to Charles White Park and do some stories in motion over there. So we also have a parenting sort of series happening with Young and Healthy, and then a parent cafe facilitated by YFS staff. Yvette is going to host a few programs using the grant that she got for virtual programming. So we're getting mini iPads. So she's going to use those for those First Page Fridays and family book clubs. One virtual field trip to the Lee Curio State Park, and a lot of other fun things. So I'm really excited for all of our programs we have planned. And you'll see that our Curiosity Connection, it has a little image for everywhere that we're gonna go for children this summer. So we have the stories in motion, and then we're gonna do some pop-ups just in the 3 parks throughout Altadena, one time each summer. For teens, Isabel, our teen librarian, and as well as Aaron, our new innovations librarian, and Chloe have put together a teen guidebook, which they can kind of make to whatever they want it to be. The first 50 teens that sign up or pick up a guidebook will also get a copy of Color Outside the Lines. And those are short stories about interracial relationships written for teens. So the guidebook, it doesn't have all of this in it. These are all of the ideas, and it got edited down a little bit, but it does have a lot of journaling pages, writing prompts, genre advisory quiz, some resource guides, and things that teens can use to kind of explore the Altadena neighborhood and community, as well as give them some activities and things to do during the summer. And at the end, there is a Tearaway postcard and evaluation. So teen programming, they will have some Instagram live series, zine workshops, Procreate classes using those mini iPads that we are getting through that virtual programming grant, and some outdoor socially distant picnics. The shared landscape program, which is part of the grant that Isabel and Aaron received from California Humanities, they're pushing that back to the fall. So we're not doing that this summer, but they'll be coming soon. And then, as I mentioned earlier, our mobile library will begin this summer. So they are doing a lot of outings that are closely tied to our children's services over the summer. So they'll be doing the stories in action, pop-ups in the parks, and they will also be attending the concerts in the parks over the summer. And then the biggest thing we want to get is some evaluations, and we're trying to find ways to be more qualitative versus quantitative of our evaluations of our programs. So we are trying to get some stories and people's thoughts about what they did during their summer, how best they used our different materials that we're giving to them, what they would like to see in the future. So children and family who complete our evaluation will receive a spot in our drawing. And then if they complete our entire challenge, they'll also receive an additional spot. And our final drawing for kids is a Nintendo Switch Lite for that first person we draw. And then additional winners will receive $5 Kid Space gift cards. And then for teens, if they turn in their evaluations, they may be able to win in a pair of earpods. Super exciting. So that is it. That is all my things. If you have any questions, let me know. I know we're really excited about this summer.
This is so exciting. It seems like there's a lot of really fun stuff. And as fond as my own memories are from like summer reading growing up, I love the expanded focus on lots of ways to participate and create and, think about engaging in different activities over the course of the summer. So I think that's really cool. You mentioned that you're going to be at the concerts. Are the concerts at Farnsworth?
Yes.
Are those on the books? They've confirmed that they're going to go forward with them?
As far as I am aware, they are on the books. Yeah, they have
yeah,
the whole schedule, and we are planning on attending. So
great.
And they've got some
Great.
different music this year, so hopefully we'll see a broader age range of
yeah.
Yeah.
Our goal is to have like our kits, our summer reading kits, they'll be on the mobile library. We'll have some dates that people can drive by like last year and pick them up from their cars, but they'll also be available at all 3 of our library locations.
This is exciting. So what's the kickoff date for when you can go and pick up your box and your kit or dive in?
On the 5th. So on the 5th, we
okay.
have our magician show that starts at 11. So anytime during the 5th, you can come into the library and pick up a kit, and we'll have a drive-by hours from 3 to 5 on the 5th as well.
Okay. Awesome. Any other questions for Mei-Ling? There's a lot of really fun stuff happening here. So Rushmore, please go ahead.
This is just a great program you've laid out, and the last slide you had about the evaluation got me thinking. Before you got to that slide, I was wondering how you come up with the program. So obviously, I think it's very important to gauge, what's working, what's not working. And since I'm new to this and I didn't see what the program was last year, I mean, how much of this is brought in from last year? And if these are new, how did you come up with these ideas? Was it again, feedback from the prior summer? And, because I just love the fact that we are continuing to evolve and modify based on what the responses are from the participants.
So some of it is back from last summer, like our tween-aged writing workshops that were held virtually were very popular over last summer. And then some of it is based around sort of this weird transition period that we're in. So figuring out how to do outdoor programs and what programs will work well in that space, as well as our program plans or operational plans for the year. We wanted to do a series on parenting programs. So this is a good time to have those available for parents.
That's great stuff. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Any other questions on or comments or feedback for Mei-Ling? Okay. Well, I'm really excited. Thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. Looks like we've got an amazing summer coming up.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much. All right. Well, next we move into some of our additional reports. So first up, we have Bridget with us from the foundation. Hi, Bridget.
Hey, hi. I love to start out a report with a drum roll. So I'm going to, there you are. We just received a grant of $9,000 from the Tournament of Roses Foundation. And I'm so excited about it. I can hardly stand it. And this is for the van. And I think maybe Diego has a snap of the photo we took today to send to them.
Aw.
Yeah.
That's so great.
It is great. We're really, really excited. And we so appreciate their confidence in our foundation and what we're able to do. We have also requested funding support from Congresswoman Judy Chu, County Supervisor Catherine Barger, State Senator Anthony Portantino, and State Assemblyman Chris Holden. We have heard back from Chris Holden's office, who will be sending us a check for $5,000. So
wow.
We are on a roll here.
I guess.
I'm really excited. But no matter what happens with all of the requests, we know this van's going to be out on the neighborhoods. And I mean, from just sort of a vision less than a year ago to actually putting this sucker out on the streets, I'm so excited. I do, though, I would be remiss if I didn't thank Chloe Cavalier for the hours and hours she has put in to help us get that grant written properly, providing all the data we needed. And then our board directors, Dawn Digrius Smith and Leslie Dink, worked literally until the last minute possible to get that grant in. And I'm so grateful for their help. So at our May board meeting, we did decide to elect or appoint a vice president, which is something the foundation really has not had. We've had secretary, treasurer, and president, but recognizing that we have to have a more robust transition for leadership. And so we hope to have someone appointed by the July meeting. And then we are also going to move forward with hiring a part-time administrative assistant or foundation manager. We haven't worked out the title yet, but we recognize we really need somebody to concentrate on our database to get the information we need so that we can more responsibly and effectively communicate with our donors, because we have email addresses for some, we have mailing addresses for a few, but we don't have any complete information on anybody. And, you know, we've added almost 2,000 names, but the data we have is very limited. So we're working on, we know volunteers as board directors can only give so much time. So we recognize that it's time for us to step up and invest in this, feeling quite confident that this investment will really pay off in the long run by helping us to better engage with our donors. We will be attending the Serving with a Purpose mini conference on fundraising. And then we did also decide to change our meetings to the second Wednesday so that, I don't know, the possibility is Rushmore and I can get our reports in on time.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I know it's been kind of a frustration also on the part of, you know, our library director and our administrative assistant there in terms of, you know, we can usually come up with an oral report, but to get it written in a timely manner has been difficult. So we're also looking forward to our June 13th event for our donors and having the opportunity to thank them. And we also hope to see each of you trustees there joining us and meeting those individuals who are paying their way for this library, and we couldn't do it without their generous support. So as always, we thank you for your service, because we couldn't do what we do if you didn't do what you do. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Bridget. That's a lot of really exciting developments. And just, I would just also really commend the decision to bring somebody on board for the administrative work, because I know exactly what you mean about how much data there is to wrangle and what a huge job that is. And
yeah,
the directors of the foundation work so hard, and it's totally unrealistic to imagine that, you know, as wonderful as they are as volunteers, that's, you know, it's not possible.
yeah.
So it's such a smart, I think it's such a smart move. And as we see the foundation kind of growing and developing, it's really logical next steps. So
yeah,
great to hear.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. Any questions for Bridget or the foundation before we thank her for her time? Oh, go ahead, Terry, please.
One for me, Bridget, you said that you'll be you're scheduling interviews with a few people that have expressed interest in joining the board. And is there a deadline there for that sort of thing, or are you still?
No, it's ongoing. Of course, you know, I always feel this sense of urgency about getting a full complement for our board of directors. We're down to 8 again. So our hope is to have at least 2 to 3 on board by our July meeting. But as always, if you're aware of individuals who you think would want to serve in this capacity, please pass their information along to me, and somebody on the board will get in touch with them. And we're accepting applications, and then we set up interviews to see if, this is a good match.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you for asking.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Bridget. Really appreciate it. All right, next up we have Marnie with us from the Friends. Hi, Marnie.
Hello, how are you today?
Good, good, good. How are you?
Good, I'm good. It's good to see you all.
Same.
So I wanted to say with great glee that we will be having our Friends annual meeting on Saturday, the 5th of June at 12 noon. I'm not certain if I've spoken with you about it. I know Bridget heard about this. Our guest speaker will be Ann Miskey, the CEO, and Sean Morrissey, the Senior Director at the Pasadena-based Union Station Homeless Services. And they'll be speaking about homelessness in our community and the challenges and changes of the past year and how we can all make a difference. So I'm looking forward to that, and I'm also hoping that some of you will join us. It's the event where we elect our new officers for the next year going forward. So I'm also looking forward to that. And we'll have a couple of people attending the Serving with a Purpose convention in June. Sally, who is our current vice president, and who, no, actually Joy is our current vice president, but Sally, who has been acting as our executive or administrative officer, she'll be the president coming up after the election. We anticipate that Sally will be elected to the president of our organization. So we're looking forward to that also. So that is my report. And I'm also looking forward to summer reading or summer in Altadena. Thanks very much for having me.
Thank you, Marnie. Really appreciate it. And it sounds like actually that this may be the last meeting where you join us as president of the Friends, if I'm understanding that correctly. So if that's the case, I just want to say thank you so much from all of us for your tremendous service to this library. And I know that you will be in the mix going forward, but I just want to express our appreciation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
All right. Any questions for Marnie, or any questions on any of the activities the Friends have coming up? Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. I think this program on the 5th sounds really exciting. So hopefully folks can join. All right. Thank you so much. All right. We come now to our director's report, which begins on page 31 of your board package. So hi, Nikki. Welcome.
Good evening, trustees, staff, and community members tuning in. Can't believe another month of 2021 has already flown by. Kudos to Bridget and the foundation for pursuing so many funding options for us. I also spoke to Assemblymember Holden's office twice lately. The first time it was with Nicole and I. We were asked to join with CSDA to present to his staff about why special district funding is important. So we threw together, I think we had less than like 24 hours to put a presentation together. We did it. And then we sent it to them as a letter. And then following Bridget's letter from them, they reached out and they actually asked me to put together an ask. So we sent them the same letter again, but asked specifically for 25,000. So we'll see what happens, because he really wants to put forward a funding request for our library district. So fingers crossed, and thanks to the foundation for pursuing that for us. So we did get the sad news that our wonderful library clerk Hector Acosta resigned earlier this month. His last day with us was May 13th. He worked for us for about 2 years, so we wish him well with all of his future endeavors. In case you didn't see all of our wonderful social media promotion, thanks to Chloe, about expanding services to the full main library on May 18th, now you know. Thanks to the staff for so warmly welcoming all of our wonderful patrons back. Both branches are definitely seeing more and more people each day. During our first week, so last week, we averaged over 110 people at the main library and then 20 over at Bob Lucas. So we're getting a really good steady stream of patrons, and we're happy to have everybody back. I would also like to formally congratulate Katie Clark, our fantastic board president, for her CLA President's Award. Only one person gets it every year, and the award is given annually to recognize the outstanding contributions, leadership, and achievement in support of California libraries by a trustee, friend, elected official, or other layperson who has given his or her time and talents to further the advancement of California libraries. Katie has given so much of her time and talents to our district and to the Measure Z campaign this past year. We are so lucky to have you, such a passionate advocate for our Altadena libraries, such a well-deserved award. Speaking of CLA, we had, I believe, 12 staff attend the virtual conference this year from May 11th through the 14th. Victor and I have talked, and what we're going to do is provide like a video presentation of each staff person kind of highlighting their experience for the board at your meeting in June. So more to come on that. So as I mentioned in my report, when you're looking at the statistics, what really stood out to me was the increase in our Library of Things items. We had a 280% increase from March to April. And just to highlight some of the things that people are checking out, and I know Camila can attest to this, we have the mobile hotspots, Chromebooks or Windows laptops, hiking backpacks. We have the telescope checked out 3 times last month. And I love watching this collection grow and be used by our community. So that's really impressive to me. And we're just, I think, going to continue to see our statistics grow across the board and hopefully at some point be able to compare them from the year before and things like that. So that now our not so fun topic. With the formation of the Community Facilities District, we discovered that the way this funding shows up is as a special tax lien on all Altadena single family homes. Although we haven't cashed out the bonds and the taxes won't be collected until the tax roll of fiscal year 22-23, those that are now in a refinance or are buying or selling property in Altadena will see this as part of their paperwork. As a result, our administration, also known as Nicole, has received many phone calls about this special tax lien. Her and I actually recently met with the Pasadena Foothill Association of Realtors to let that group know about this special tax lien and create awareness around it. Chloe also put together a one-sheet for us to share with them, as well as any other groups, organizations, or businesses that we can connect with, just to spread the word that this is just what is going to be on Altadena properties moving forward. If anyone has questions that come up to you, please refer them to me. I'm happy to talk to them about what the special tax lien is. And we also have a very informative web page on the website, which is altadenalibrary.org/special tax lien. But I just wanted to make sure the board was aware because there has been a large volume of calls. We're also going to work with our municipal advisory firm, Urban Futures, to come up with a public relations campaign around it as well. Next year in April is when people can apply for the very low income tax or very low income exemption related to that. So we'll work with our CFD administration firm as well as the municipal advisor, again, to notify people as much as possible so that we prevent panic around the word lien. It's been an interesting past few months. Okay, moving on. Congrats to Diana over at Bob Lucas for launching our career online high school on May 17th. She's already recruited 1 student. Just wanted to let you guys know to spread the word if you know of anyone in the community, 18 or older, that's interested in pursuing their high school diploma, please send them our way. And as Bridget mentioned, the mobile library unit plans are moving full speed ahead. Jonathan was installing shelves this afternoon, and him and Chloe are sending it off to be wrapped tomorrow. Chloe let me know that we have also purchased a bubble machine, LED lights to draw people in, and we're hoping to add a musical horn. So much fun. So I also would like to, I went over to the Bob Lucas branch this afternoon, and it's amazing how that vegetable garden is already growing, not to mention the garden out front. I mean, seriously. So I would highly recommend going to take a look at that. We're also going to be adding some garden beds here on the next to the wood fence on the south side of the parking lot. So Jonathan's been busy working on that. Big thanks to Levi, Bridget's son, as well as all of the other partners that have helped make these happen. From what Jonathan's told me, most of it has been like donated. So it's practically been a no cost community project as well, which is great. And I'd also like to thank Camila for all of your connections to help us create such great Ramadan programming last month. So as part of that celebration. So that's all I have for this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, well, let's go to Camila first. She's been waiting very patiently. Camila, please.
Let me put my hand down before I forget. Lower hand. My original question was about the Library of Things, and I don't know if we've ever discussed where the things are they donated by community members, or is the library investing in them? I wasn't sure, and the reason why I asked is because we were the small one and I were in the library this week, and he was entranced by the Xboxes and the PS4, which the staff explained that, you know, it usually is in the teen section so the teens can play there. But he was like, can I take these home? And I'm like, no, you can't take these home. So I was just curious because then my husband was mentioning that he had an Xbox 360. He's like, what should I do with it? And so I was just wondering if things are donated generally or if you all are purchasing them.
My understanding is that most of it are items that we've purchased, but I don't think we would be opposed to taking donated items as long as they were in like good working order.
Right.
I know Christopher has created a forum for people to make, like the public to make suggestions for things to add to the Library of Things. So that could potentially be a way to do that, as well as we created a separate forum for staff. The tricky thing about the Library of Things is you got to make sure you have staff that are familiar with the items that you're adding to it.
Yeah.
So each thing that gets added has kind of like a staff resident expert of it that, you know, can fix it or make sure all of the parts are there. So like, for example, Michaela is our sewing machine expert because she knows all about them and all the things that are supposed to be returned with it and all of that. So
yeah,
I believe the telescope was donated to us. We worked with JPL on that, but
yeah. Speaking of the telescope, he's also very excited to check that out. He saw it and he went right to it. And so my husband and I are talking about maybe taking it on our camping trip that we have coming up. So yeah, I just wanted to say it was really nice to see the Library of Things in person, and, you know, to see the variety of things that were there. And then just to add to your comment on the Ramadan programming, the families were excited and really pleased to have, you know, their teens, their kids involved, and the community was, you know, really excited to, you know, to be able to see, you know, our board at the masjid, at the mosque was really excited to see the, you know, Ramadan represented so lovely, so well, and just, you know, even the flyer is beautiful. I took one to just, you know, keep in my own archives because it was just beautifully done. So yeah, I just wanted to thank you all of the library staff, you know, Helen and Isabel for just really lovely job with the Ramadan programming.
Yeah, thank you. I'll pass that along.
Other questions or feedback or comments for Nikki?
I have one more, I'm sorry.
Do it. No, not at all.
The picture of the mobile library unit that's in the report, that's what the wrapping is going to look like? Is that the plan?
Yes.
Yeah, it looks really cool. I love it.
Yeah, she did an amazing job.
Very nice. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and I heard that it'll be back by Friday. So.
Oh, wow.
If you're in the parking lot, you'll be able to see it.
Looking forward to that.
All right. Anything else from anybody from the director's report?
Just
Rushmore,
a
please.
quick
Yeah, go
comment
ahead.
on the vehicle. You may want to purchase some sort of awning, or you can buy something just for the vehicle itself to keep it clean. Because I know that where it's going to be parked, it can get dirty. So you want to you want to be presentable. So to minimize the amount of washing, you may just want to invest in a some sort of single vehicle tent, if you will. I've seen those before that may be worthwhile investing in.
That's a good suggestion. Thanks.
As you were saying that, Rushmore, also, I thought initially that you were going to suggest, like, wherever it's parked in the summertime, maybe an awning that pops out to provide some shade for whoever might be visiting it, or the staff in there. I don't know. But that might also be an interesting idea as well.
Yeah, it's a good
It's a
idea.
great idea. Yeah, it's a great idea. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Nikki. A lot of exciting stuff. Really appreciate it. Okay. Next, we come to our financial reports, which begin on page 34 of your board package. And Nicole, would you like to walk us through it for this month, please?
Yes, thank you. Can everybody hear me okay? Perfect. Okay. So these are financial statements for the month of March 21, which puts us at 75% of our budget year. As indicated on the balance sheet, actual year-to-date revenues exceed actual year-to-date expenditures, reflecting a net income of $985,599.60. Cash and cash equivalents are at $3.1 million. Total cash with the county is just over $3 million, which more than satisfies our district reserves policy. Total assets equal about $6.4 million. Revenue highlights, we really only had the one to highlight for March. There was an addition of about $8,300 to our property tax income. Several expenditure highlights. About $6,700 was spent on annual tree trimming and maintenance at both the main and branch locations, as well as some irrigation supplies over at the branch for the garden. Just over $94,000 was paid to the LA County Registrar Recorder for our 2020 election fees, which was less than our budgeted amount by over $25,000, which is very exciting. About $1,900 was paid for staff trainings and managerial and librarian attendance at CLA 2021. Most district staff are able to attend that at no cost if they are support staff. $3,700 was spent on summer reading program prize books and materials for picture book kits. That was funded by a California State Library copycat grant that the Youth and Family Services team applied for and was awarded. And then $3,285 was paid to Khalifa Group for the 3 scholarships for Career Online High School as part of literacy programming. They provided 3 additional scholarships at no cost. Any questions about the financials? I know we also have the budget to get to, so I'm expecting a lot of questions later.
Certainly. I did have a quick question. Why did we, I'm delighted that we ended up spending less with LA County, but why was the amount so much less than we had anticipated?
The initial estimate was provided by the county. We do actually have a document from them saying that it was going to be around 120,000, and they just estimate that based on several factors, including how many staff they need, how many mailers they send out, how long it takes them to process everything, how many ballots there are to process. So based on that, the updated invoice that we received didn't have as many staffing requirements, as many counting requirements. It just ended up being less than what they projected.
Okay. Well, it's really interesting because I know we've taken some of those estimates into account in thinking about how by district elections may work in the future. So that's a fairly substantial difference between their estimate and what it ended up being. I'm glad it went down. Any other questions for Nicole on financials? And as she says, we'll get to the budget discussion in a little bit. Okay. Well, then I think that covers it. Thank you so much, Nicole. Then we come to our committee reports. Lots of committee activity this month, so no shortage of discussion here, I'm sure. So let's go first to our budget committee. That report appears beginning on page 45 of your board package. And Rushmore, I'll hand it to you.
Great, thank you, Katie. Trustee Wilkerson and I met as part of the budget committee last week, and we reviewed the proposed budget for next fiscal year beginning July 1st. And they submitted a very sound budget, we felt. It reflects a total amount of about $4.25 million total. This reflects a 2% increase from the current fiscal year that we're in. It also transfers approximately $33,000 to the reserve fund, as well as now reflects a almost a $3.5 million reserve balance going into next fiscal year. This is an interesting budget this year because now we're actually showing CFD expenditures for the first time, as well as reimbursement from the bond proceeds. So this proposed budget includes a increase of $299 for last year, as well as expenditure for this year, as well as expenditures that were incurred this year associated with the CFD and the bond transaction, as well as almost let me see, it was $284,000 of future expenditures and a reimbursement from the bond proceeds that will be incurred prior to actually receiving the fund. So there's going to be a reimbursement for both the current fiscal year of $299 and $284 for next fiscal year. So it's kind of a unique column that's been added to this budget. And a go-forward basis, for transparency purposes, there will be a CFD budget line specifically for that. This is really the only time we're actually going to be able, you're going to see an actual, I believe, the library fronting the monies, because at this point, once we have the bond proceeds, we should be able to have enough cash to be able to cover the expenditures, so it won't be reflected as a reimbursement. But certainly all activities, one of those won't be fronted, it'll be reimbursed, but it won't necessarily be cash out of pocket right away. Overall, like I said, the overall budget is sound. There, as Nikki's indicated in the past, the passport service group has been extremely busy, and as such, the volume of the income coming in has increased increased by $65,000. That's a huge increase from, I believe, $20,000 for the current fiscal year to an additional $65,000 next year. Let me see, there was some nominal increases for salary and benefits that are obligatory. Includes 20% increase in health insurance costs and CalPERS 19%, which are obligatory. Aside from a $19,000 increase in professional development activities for employees physically returning to the library, the operating expenses reflect minor increases across the board. But I think it's really important. I think it was wise for Nikki and the team to want to increase the professional development, certainly as they're coming back, make sure that they get the appropriate training necessary and the like. Also, there's an increase of 90% to support the critical programs the library provides. There's been a shift in some programs, as well as an increase for the mobile library collection and purchase suggestions. So taking some of the line items that were previously provided and reallocating, but usually increasing it significantly to be able to really reflect the needs that we're going to be providing. The budget also covers the necessary support for the mobile library, both staffing and materials. It's important to note also this particular budget's unique in that you're going to have a big drop as far as capital expenditures. You had $461,000 this fiscal year, primarily supported by a huge IT grant of, I think, about $365,000 or $385,000. So it's only going to have $40,000 this year. So we've talked with Nikki and Nicole about taking that the capital projects and take them offline so that you don't have these huge ups and downs, because it doesn't really reflect the true consistency of the budget. These are one-time expenditures and they can be reflected off budget, but as far as the overall budget package. So we'll have that for next fiscal year. And at Camila and my request, the staff had prepared a couple of very easy to read charts that I think is great for transparency and letting the people of Altadena be able to see how not only the money is being sent by department within the library, and also how the staff is spending their time. So we'll be reviewing that as far as the budget package, but I really appreciate the team putting that in just very basic, readable format so people can really understand, where the money's going and how the staff are spending their time. And just For administrative purposes, we have been kind of operating on a ad hoc basis as far as creating or having our budget meetings. So we actually put something on the table for or the books, excuse me, for next fiscal year, and we solidified four dates for next fiscal year: August 5th, November 4th of this year, February 3rd, and May 5th of 2022. And then lastly, you'll get a presentation of this later. We received a presentation on the 21-22 budget for LAFCO. So I want to thank the library staff for, again, a very sound budget, very thoughtful in making sure they address all the needs. And specifically, I really like the idea of them increasing the program dollars as well as the staff promotion, or certainly recognition and training, which is very helpful, as well as considering what they've been through the last year. So I really want to thank Nikki and her team for that. So Camila, any additional thoughts that I didn't cover? No? Okay, so we're here to answer any questions you may have.
So at this time, I think we can entertain any questions about process or anything on that. For specific questions about the budget, I'd like to hold those so we get to item 8F later on in the agenda, and we'll have a very full discussion about that. But any comments or feedback about process at this time would be appropriate. I just want to say, love the charts. I have some questions about them, but I really appreciate some of the efforts at simplifying the data and making it more legible and accessible to folks who don't spend all their time up to the eyeballs and the ALD budget. But so I think that's terrific. I love knowing the schedule of meetings ahead of time. I think that's really good as well. So thank you so much for all your hard work. I know this is one of the very busy times of year for the budget committee. All right, if there's nothing else for the budget committee, then we can come to the CFD committee, and their report appears on page 47 of your board package. And Terry, I'll hand it to you.
Okay, thank you. You can see on that we met on May the 12th, which is one of our regularly scheduled meetings. And we had most of the members in attendance. We heard from Doug Anderson of Urban Futures, who's a municipal advisory firm, about what to expect during the bond process and so on. He's not in charge of everything in that, but he gave us a pretty good set of dates and so on, sort of mileposts to look at and be aware of as we work through the process. He thought that the sale of bonds could be launched sometime in September, maybe concluded in October, if we can stay on track for assembling the rest of our team. We've got a couple of members that we'll talk about later in this report that we need to get on board, and we've started the process for that. So it was very interesting. It kind of, for me anyway, it sort of opened the door to what to expect in terms of timing and how quickly this process will move. He was pretty solid, very good report, and we appreciated having him there. And then Nora O'Brien, who's part of our bond council from BB&K, also gave a report about what to expect from the legal side. Excuse me. And there are some issues there, not issues, but some processes we'll have to go through with the lawyers regarding resolutions of issuance and other items that need to be issued in advance, a little bit in advance. So she sounds like she's got very good experience in what the rhythm of all of those things are as we make sure the legality of what we're doing going forward. She also said that we needed to take a look at our debt policy, which I thought, of course, was a good idea, and that we're going to need a special tax consultant and a fiscal agent or a bank. And I knew this was coming, that specializes in these sorts of proceedings for bond financing, because we're going to want to invest our money, any money that we're holding, in certain ways and so on. And we'll get advice from that as we keep assembling our team. So there's 2 or 3 more that she talked about that we haven't even addressed yet. But the real subject of this meeting was to start talking about RFPs for bond underwriting services and the community facilities district administrative services. So what we are going to recommend to the board tonight is to take a look at the RFP that we've got teed up for this. Vicki did a terrific job with it, that we can send out for these and start to nail down the applicants for this going forward. So it was a good meeting, and only took an hour, but we accomplished quite a lot. And we are going to have another meeting tomorrow, a special meeting that will be our committee taking a look at how we will sort of score everybody, all of the RFPs that come in the same way that we did last time. We'll develop our method and so on, and figure out if we need to, you know, how much diligence we need to put toward scrubbing up these RFPs. So that's a 30,000-foot view of what we did. Any questions, anybody?
That's a lot. You guys have been busy. I think probably it's going to be worth having a little bit of discussion in a minute or two about our upcoming joint meeting between the CFD committee and the facilities committee, which of course is a special board meeting, so we'll all be there. But I think it might be helpful to go through the facilities report first and then chat about it a little bit. It's kind of a couple of questions that are highlighted in there. So anything else for the CFD committee specifically? Okay, fair enough. Well, then as advertised, it's facilities committee time. So that report begins on page 48 of your board package. And Jason, take it away.
All right, we'll see how quickly this can become routine here, this pattern. So yes, we held our meeting in May, and then we've actually begun a weekly meeting with our team from Rakeland Partners. First meeting on May 3rd. So that starts to give you some idea of how much work we all have ahead of us. What we've been focused on so far in May is really just kind of establishing the benchmark, just kind of where we're starting from in light of the work that's been done so far. So, you know, reviewing existing documents and plans for the buildings, establishing a more clear calendar and timeline for various projects, primarily focused on planning and design, identifying the community stakeholders that will need to engage, you know, having a full understanding of the report from ARG and their costing process. And then, you know, just thinking about the calendar and starting to realize how much work is involved. We want to identify early on the various contractors and additional vendors that we'll need to be engaged with, so that we can get those requests for proposals out and have those folks lined up, so that once the bonds and all that are ready to go, we're not delayed by, you know, more kind of administrative work. Katie just brought up, so we have scheduled a joint meeting of the Facilities Ad Hoc Committee and the CFD Committee on June 10th at 2 p.m. You know, I think the overarching goal that we've talked about is just making sure that neither side is duplicating work. So we want to discuss roles and responsibilities of each committee as it relates to the bonds and the building projects. We want to include, you know, representatives from our team at Rakeland Partners, our municipal advisors, Urban Futures, and then also BB&K, who's our bond and disclosure council. So, you know, we want to outline the planning and the conversations that have happened so far. We want to get some additional feedback to both teams, and kind of establish some best practices for information flow and decision-making between the two sides. So I know that, you know, in our work with the ad hoc committee, you know, we've kind of drafted what an information flow chart could look like. I know that's something that we want to review. I guess I'll kind of finish the report and then we can kind of get into more specific questions. Another big part of all of this that we've been talking about in the ad hoc committee is how to best have a more an ongoing way to have and incorporate community feedback in the work that we're doing, and what exactly would that look like. So we're continuing to look at that. I think Katie, we're hoping that by sometime in June, we'll be able to be more public than that. But who we're looking to include at this point is a representative of staff from the library, the Friends, the Foundation, Town Council, Altadena Heritage, the Altadena Historical Society, and then 2 at-large seats that we would do some kind of application process similar to the other community engagement groups we've established in the past. And then lastly, and it was kind of perfect timing in some ways on this, we held one of our meetings was held the day after news broke that Pasadena was being forced to shut down their main library due to seismic issues that I am still baffled as to how nobody knew this before now. But one of the very first things that our team at Rakeland recommended is that we conduct a tier 3 seismic study of the main branch. I think the whole committee, I think there's a clear consensus that that needs to be done. You see that on the agenda for tonight as an action item. I think the worst thing in the world that we could do would be to issue these bonds, spend a ton of money, hire all these people, begin construction, and then figure out that, oh, hey, we need to spend a bunch of money on seismic stuff instead. It would just be really irresponsible to go that route, at least in my opinion. So you'll see that later on the agenda. And then there's some other things that we'll probably be looking to agendize for the June meeting in that same vein of really just doing our due diligence, especially on the financial side of things, and making sure that we've really checked every possible scenario before we actually, put shovels in the ground, if you will. Anything else, Katie, before we open it up?
No, I think that's good. I just to clarify, the seismic study RFP will appear on probably next month's agenda. So do keep an eye out for that. All the RFPs we're looking at this month are CFD committee related items.
Yeah, sorry.
No. I didn't want anybody to get confused. Like I didn't see that RFP. So yeah, a lot more to come, certainly. I mean, I think Jason's really summarized it well in that the approach of the facilities committee is, let's figure out as many questions and potential areas that could be expensive issues and that would impact, some of the design and planning choices that an architect would have to make decisions on. Let's see if we can get that information figured out early in the game, rather than, bringing on board an architect, starting a design process, and then going, oh, we've just discovered that, we didn't know there was some very expensive, complex issue that now means we're going to have to scrap what we had and do something else instead. So while of course we can't, predict the future and perfectly imagine every expensive scenario that could occur, I think the goal is really to get as much data ahead of time to inform the design phase. And so you'll be seeing a lot from us. Certainly, I would like to have a conversation about our June 10th joint meeting. But before we do that, any other questions for the facilities committee? Yeah, Terry, please.
I had one. If memory serves, we did some kind of a seismic assessment not all that long ago, and I'm not suggesting that should replace what you want to do, but I don't recall there being any red flags raised for that, but I can't remember if it was old data or current data that we were looking at. Does anybody remember that as well?
Yeah, that was definitely done. I'm going to try and convey my recollection of the difference between the two. My understanding of the assessment that's been done is really just like looking at essentially what you can see from the outside of the building, right? And not really getting into the details of like what's underneath it, what was it exactly built out of and all that kind of stuff. Right, which is like a guesstimate from what I could understand, versus like really getting into the details of the building and the geology and really truly understanding what the measured risk is. Katie, do you have a better?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think it's similar to some of the, for example, some of the hazardous materials surveys that we have, where we have preliminary information, you know, enough to kind of say like, we basically know what's going on. But certainly what we've heard from Racklin is that, you know, for the main library, because it's this very particular floating block mid-century concrete construction, which is a sort of very unique way of building and a very unique set of like load-bearing walls and how it works, that doing a tier 3 seismic study is a smart idea, because while we may discover that everything is perfectly fine and there's no major issues, we may equally discover that some of the proposed amendments to this interior structure of the building will present seismic issues should we proceed with them as we've kind of imagined. So like moving that elevator, moving a staircase, we may need to think about that. And so I, you know, my understanding of the tier 2 versus tier 3 versus what we have right now, I don't know that it's officially a tier 1, but it's sort of a very preliminary look at, as Jason says, sort of the exterior thing. It looks at the as-built, it looks at some of the documentation, but the tier 3 assessment really gets in the material of the building and says, okay, here's what's actually happening. So it's just a much more detailed set of data that would represent more what you would discover when you start, you know, taking things apart. Yeah.
I think I made a very architecturally ignorant statement in our meeting. I said, essentially, it's this giant block of concrete with really thick walls. It should be fine. And they were like, well, actually not at all, because of this floating block and it's all this different stuff that makes it look as beautiful as it is, creates a set of issues that if it was just a giant block of concrete wouldn't exist. So that's my, you know, lack of understanding of architecture explanation of why they recommended the tier 3.
So it wasn't built like the pyramids then, basically?
Not at all.
I had just
but it looks better, some would argue.
Yeah, then the last comment, or just a comment of mine, is I think your committee, your representatives are just spot on, and it's nice to see, you know, the Altadena Heritage and the Historical Society getting involved. Hopefully they'll sign on for that. That'd be terrific.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, certainly I will say, like, as we're thinking about what that community focus group looks like, this is our current iteration. I mean, I don't think it's by any means intended to be a final or exclusive kind of list. So, you know, as you all think about it, if you think of other organizations or, you know, groups that it would be helpful to include, our thought process was really to establish a sort of small group of folks who could help us establish some priorities, you know, as groups that do a lot of community programming or operate in historic spaces or kind of are involved with similar questions, but also help us get the word out, right? Because certainly we will have much more wide-ranging opportunities for community input, but it's not really practical to do that at every single stage. So if you have thoughts, we'd be really delighted to hear them about, you know, other groups or other structures that you feel like might be helpful to include. This was our sort of best version, and of course, you know, we also still have to invite all of these groups to participate, and we hope certainly that they will agree to do that. Yeah, Rushmore, please.
To the seismic assessment, I'm curious as to how long that would take. And then secondly is that if in fact there are substantive findings that require significant upgrades to the structure, what does that do to the timing of our plan for bond issuance and rehab? And what happens to the budget overall? Is, let's say, for instance, you know, they come back and say it's a $5 million cost to retrofit it. I'm just throwing a number out there.
Right.
Obviously, we haven't contemplated that. So And you have to do that before you can really do anything else. So what are the thoughts about as we go down this path? And I think it's the right path, but just because I want to manage expectations at the same time, and just kind of curious as to what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, Jason, do you want to start on that? I can speak to it certainly as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't recall like a specific timeline. I mean, like Nikki said, we're hoping to have in the June board meeting on the agenda approval to put the RFP out. I think most of our RFPs have been about a 45-day process. So
yeah, I wasn't worried about the RFP process. It was more of, once they've got the contract. What does that look like as far as is it 6 months? And and then there's the assessment, and then there is the second piece of it. Then all right, well then is what is it kind of going to cost? So that's two. Right. I mean, it's two different things you have to contemplate. So when you do the contract, make sure they can do both.
Right. No, that's correct. And I think you're sort of speaking to some of the things that hopefully we can dive into more deeply at our June 10th. No, I mean, I think that's a perfect example of exactly the kind of question that we want to align information between the two committees, right? Because the sort of short answer is, we have a pretty detailed project schedule, but there are some parallel tracks of things that are happening, both on assessments, because certainly the seismic assessment is important, but it's not the only important thing. And there could be other things, that also, explode or derail our timelines to various degrees, or derail the budget to various degrees. So, we've done some preliminary work as a committee in looking out, kind of 12, 18 months to what that would look like and what could be moved if things need to be moved. I think we've also done some preliminary work, and I think we'll have more by the time we get together on June 10th about what some very rough budget estimates look like, both in terms of what we're calling baseline projects, so things that are really non-negotiable, like, accessibility issues, HVAC upgrades, roof stuff, and then things that are more discretionary. And I think, the good news is that there's enough room in the discretionary kind of category of things that if we have some huge unexpected expenses that become baseline projects, we can still accommodate them. But it certainly will mean that there are some cool discretionary things we wouldn't be able to do. So, and that's really I think you've also identified the real rationale for doing a lot of this assessment work up front, so that we can have realistic conversations as a board, but also with the community of like, okay, this is the amount of money we have, and this is what we've got to do. So this is what we've got left over. And I think as we start to get more data on all of that, we'll know a lot more. But yeah, certainly I think more to come on that. And I think, I would ask you to please bring that question back up on June 10th, because I'd like to hear the folks from Rathline speak to it as well. And I think they'll, have some very detailed answers based on some of their experience. Okay, so yeah, so speaking a little bit more about this joint committee meeting on the 10th, one of the questions that we were asking in our facilities committee meeting today is, what's the most helpful set of outcomes, and how can we design, an agenda and a conversation and have the appropriate documentation for everybody, so that we all come out of it going, yep, that was good. We feel like we're clearer and we know what we're doing going forward. So, Jason's spoken to that, I think, a bit from the facilities committee side, which is we've got some org charts and some timelines and some budgets and some plans, and of course we'll put all of that together. But it would be really helpful to know from the point of view of our colleagues on the CFD committee, what do you all feel would be helpful to come away from that meeting with, so that we can set it up in such a way that happens?
I'll let Rushmore run with that one a little bit.
Well, I would just say, as you said, Katie, I just really want to make sure that there's a clear line of so that we're ensuring that no one's crossing over. We know each other's doing, and we each have the roles and responsibilities to the greatest extent possible in creating obviously some synergies amongst the various contractors to make sure that we are addressing all the needs that we have to, and collectively they could, in a group setting like that, I think that we could probably tease out probably the best practices that we could to ensure that we're doing things correctly. But I'm really going to defer to the consultants to a certain degree to make sure that they're guiding us properly, and ask, don't assume that we know, tell us what their opinions are, and maybe we pivot based on what the feedback is, and have a joint discussion about each of the logical steps we need to follow.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
And then
Terry,
for-
anything that? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jason.
No, I was just gonna just the other thing for Terry and Rushmore, to get your opinion on. The other thing that we talked about in our meeting this morning was to suggest that Nikki serve as kind of the central facilitator for the meeting on the 10th, since she's kind of the point person for the library and all of this, and probably has a better sense than I think any of us do individually about all the different moving pieces. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that would make sense. I'm not sure, Tara, how you feel, but I think, obviously Nikki would be, be a logical point person.
Yeah, I think that, I'll jump in here. I think that this is an interesting conversation. If you were prioritizing it, the number one thing should probably be safety. And then you work up to functionality, and then you work up to some of the, appearance. So that's another category, et cetera. But you start with that ground zero of safety. And I remember we had conversations about the fire suppression system as well. I know that needs a lot of work. And one of my pet peeves has been the windows. I know that they wouldn't be installed, I believe. I'm not sure about that in this day and age. So what do we do about those? So making, prioritizing how we're proceeding based on that, I guess is obvious, but the way we're all talking about it now really makes me want to come up with some anagram sign, like safety and functional, SFA, kind of get it so everybody's preaching the same thing.
Yeah. No, Terry, that's a really interesting point, and it makes me think about also what the expectations from the facilities committee to the board, and similarly from the CFD committee to the board, what the expectations around reporting and documentation and data might be, because I think that as we go a little further, we're going to get into some of those documentation issues, and I would like to make sure that we're bringing things to you all with a frequency and with a level of detail that you feel like is sufficient, but not overwhelming. And so maybe one of the things we can talk about a little bit would be just what would be good to see on a regular basis, what you would like to know about, so that you have adequate time for feedback. And certainly, this is the forum to do that, right, at our monthly board meetings.
Yeah, I think one thing that I think it'd be helpful as well is, as Terry was saying, coming up with a priority of the things that we need to fund to bring the libraries up to the standard that we're looking for. But then there's also going to be this, yes, this is mandatory, and then thereafter there's the next tier is, it's really important that we do have that. It may not be necessary, but it's very important. But then it becomes the price that you have to pay for that. So there's one thing that, depending on who you're speaking to, this could be the most important thing in the world, but if it's going to cost 200% more than something else that we could get 2 for 1. In other words, we have to spend 200% for this item versus getting 2 other items that are equally as important to other people. We've got to make sure that we're prioritizing, and not only just based on what people want, but also what's cost reasonable. And I know that's subjective, but I think that that's important. It's like, when you spent that much money on a door or a window. I mean, so it has to have that conversation, as well as there's the must-haves. Retrofit, of course, ADA compliance, yes, must have. Fire suppression, must have. Roof, but there's other things that we're going to get into this gray area, and I think that we have to look at it from, yes, who wants it, because the community agrees that we need this, but we have to have a candid conversation about cost reasonableness as well, because at the end of the day, we're still going to be called into question. You spent how much money on what? So I want to make sure that we have those conversations as well.
Yeah, I think that's right. And of course, you know, the good news is that all of this ultimately comes through this body, right? So none of those decisions get made by, you know, somebody in a back room somewhere and then they just happen. Like everything comes through the board. But I think, you know, as we're thinking about when we get to those decision points in, you know, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months from now, making sure that the flow of information and the reporting and the, you know, kind of just relational flow between our two groups is something where that feels accessible. Or if you have an issue and you're like, you know what, that's a huge problem. I've worked in commercial construction and I know that if you do this, you're going to be setting yourself up for a nightmare, that there's a process to go through to flag that up. So, you know, Nikki's not just like accosted all the time by various people telling her what needs to happen. So yeah, I think those are the kinds of questions I'd like to get at our conversation on the 10th. And you know, obviously we'll also learn as we go along, but I think those are sort of the takeaways that it would be really helpful to have, certainly from my perspective. I know, you know, similarly, like I'd love to see a very detailed timeline for the bond issuance process and like what happens and when and how that impacts cash flow versus how that impacts, you know, the sale of bonds and when we reimburse the library and when the assessment hits the tax rolls and like all. I know we've talked about it, but having some, you know, kind of complex documentation, which I'm sure exists, you know, but seeing that I think would be very helpful. So does everybody feel like that's a good?
I think we should end by agreeing upon a regular schedule of both groups coming together.
Of joint meetings.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't really have any thoughts. Like I know we've all got way too many meetings going on these days. So I don't know what folks think at this point would be reasonable. Although I do think, yeah, I don't know. I'll just leave that.
Let's put it on the agenda to talk about, because I think that we could schedule things based on, you know, just the calendar year, or we could take a look at sort of what the inflection points are in the parallel processes, you know, and think about making sure that we bring everybody together in advance of those inflection points, whether it's, you know, okay, we feel like we've nailed down a design issue, or we feel like we've, you know, nailed down some important stuff around bond issuance or whatever it is. I'm not sure, but I'd love to hear people's thoughts about it, because more meetings, you know, are fine if they accomplish something. Terry, go ahead.
Well, I think that, you know, Jason's right. There's a lot of meetings going on and we don't want to burn out the you know, the committee members and so on. One obvious place to me would be just make sure that in our reports, we have a regular board meeting, we've got some metrics that we've all agreed to and that we're reporting on those metrics. So significant dates, which is a great one you talked about. When's that going to happen with the bond issue? And what's the calendar look like? All that stuff we can spell out in a meeting, in our reports, in a regular meeting. And then when we feel the need for something extra, the way we're doing now, maybe that's a good way to go. But if we could have agreed to, okay, what's my report template look like? What do I have to give to the other folks to make them, you know, understand what our deadlines and so on are? That's one way to take a crack at it.
Terry, I'm so excited that you just said the word report template, because Nikki and I have been talking about the idea that, you know, as these committee undertakings become more complex, it would be really helpful to have a sample committee report template to think about, you know, what kind of information to include. And I think, you know, we can talk about this in June when we had planned to maybe debut a couple of options. But I think that's a great idea, because standardizing what information we're accountable for every month, what it looks like, so that, you know, as somebody who's not a member of whatever committee it is, you know where to look for that, you know where to find it, and you can go back retroactively as well and kind of trace that along. I think that's awesome.
And that's going to help us too, Katie, when we get to the point where we're getting regular construction reports from Rakeland, already have some kind of set expectations for them to build off of.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay. All right. So it sounds like we've got, I think, some good takeaways. You know, I know that we're going to work on drafting an agenda and a package. And I know that Nikki's going to be in contact with all of our various consultants who are on board at this point to help think about what kind of documentation we need. So any further discussion on this at this time, or are we feeling pretty good? Okay. Thanks. That was really helpful. I appreciate that. Okay, so last but certainly not least, after after a very long wait, we come to our redistricting committee. So Camila, I'll hand it to you.
Hello. This is just a written reflection of what we discussed last month in last month's meeting. I put it in the report just to have a formal documentation of it, but it's exactly what we discussed last meeting. Are there any questions? Would you like me to go over anything specifically that is inside the report? If not, then there are no updates that that we have to add. Katie, is there anything that you would like to add, or Nikki?
No, I think you've got it. I really appreciate you memorializing all of this information. I think, if I'm remembering correctly, and Camilla, I hope you'll correct me if this is not accurate. The goal would be to sort of leave all this alone, see what we get back from the Census Bureau, you know, sort of September, October. I know, you know, Doug Johnson will keep us updated on what that data looks like and how it's going, and if it actually shows up in the time that they're expecting it to. But that there's really not much that we should expect to see before sort of Q4 of this calendar year. Is that basically right, Camila?
That is what I understand.
Okay.
And we can't really do anything until we get some information, some data. So
right,
our hands are pretty tied at this moment. So it's just wait and see type of situation.
Okay. All right. Any other questions on redistricting? Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much. We come now to our liaison reports, which begin on page 51 of your board package. Very robust report this month from Terry. So Terry, do you want to walk us through some of the highlights of your report?
Robust. I like that. Yeah, it's certainly that. Diego did a good job of kind of dressing down all the screaming headlines I had in there about special districts and so on, because as you look at the report, you've got the good news. California has a large budget surplus. And then there's it's kind of a policy statement that comes from the governor's office about $100 billion California comeback plan, et cetera. And then the bad news is it's not being spent on special districts. And there's an editorial in there by Neil McCormick, who's with the California Special District Association, to talk about that. So let me back up a little bit and say the government liaison report this month features a lot of the things that were happening at the legislative days program from the CSDA. And it was very informative, but it was also very overwhelming. There's a lot of stuff going on. And it kind of gets down to this, that there is a lot of money that is about to be released for institutions all across the country, spenders, if you will, to put into place some of these recovery package items that come from President Biden's plan. And the irony of, according to this, is that in California, we're going to have a windfall surplus, $100 billion. A lot of that, though, is actually a little less than that, is actually already spent. So the actual money that's available for spending is much less than what they are alleging here. But the special districts are not getting any of it. And the special districts as a group would be an institution that would spend or implement all this money that's coming our way from the federal government. So a lot of this was encapsulated. I'm going to kind of go through the steps of this meeting that I went to. It was actually a virtual meeting. It was held over 2 days last week. And the keynote speaker was John Garamendi, who you may recall is the Lieutenant Governor for California, I believe, and also the Insurance Commissioner back in the day. He's now a representative for District 3, a congressional representative, and he is championing special districts and trying to get money funneled to them in the state of California so that they can spend it on the items that they need to run their districts. One thing that came out of all of the things that he talked about and all the testimonials that came from special districts all through California is that it's really been rough for a lot of them. There's been a lot of fall off in revenue and so on. People have had to lay people off. They've had to let programs go fallow and so on. And it really pointed out to me the luck that we have as a special district of being funded and being able to keep all of our folks on and make it through this really rough patch. So I'm grateful, more grateful than ever to know the position that we're in based on what we saw at the meeting that we attended. Garamendi said that there's 100,000 special districts across the country, which, to me, needed a little bit of a fact challenge. And it turns out that if you add all of the school districts and other small government institutions into that, it comes close to it. There's about 89 or 90,000. But special districts proper, there's only about 50,000, the type that we are made up as. But still a lot. And there's a lot of money out there ready to come our way, but it's not teed up, if you will, by the federal government to make that happen. So there, he spoke, he got a special award, and it was, he was a very competent guy, I never saw him speak at any length like that. You can tell he's really a dedicated politician who wants good things for his district number 3 and for the state of California. He said that the American Jobs Bill, also known as the Infrastructure Bill, will pass. He's pretty sure about that. There's another one called the Families Act that might come after that he's not so sure of. And both of these bills were also handicapped by the National Special District Coalition, NSDA, which is a national version of the CSDA that we have here in California. And they said that between March of 2020 and December of 2021, U.S. special districts experienced $30.9 billion in what they call fiscal impacts, which are basically deficits. That's not much less money coming into their coffers. 41% of special districts reduced their workforce, and 54 anticipated reducing services. So it's pretty grim out there, actually, for special districts, and they needed more than ever to help spend money that might be coming to states and jurisdictions to implement these programs. They also have coined a term for a special district to sort of universalize, if you will, what it means, and they can lobby more effectively for government agencies for money. Special district means a political subdivision formed pursuant to general law or special act of a state for the purpose of performing one or more governmental or proprietary functions. And they're sticking to that description. That's the standard language as they go after all of these lawmakers across the country to lobby for more money to special districts. I will say that this group and also California Special District Association are really top-notch lobbyists. They really go into the right people, and they talked a lot about ways that individual jurisdictions can approach the government for more money. One of them was through earmarks that can be requested through our local representatives, our congressional representatives. And earmarks, I don't know that much about them, are about to be utilized again by taking a bad rap, as you might all recall, is that insidious thing that makes its way into a bill, and then that fattens up the bill for whoever the recipient is. But it's really a misnomer. Earmarks are a very, very small portion of any bill that gets passed, less than 1%. And it has to be vetted, and it has to be requested properly from jurisdictions and so on. I don't anticipate that the Altadena Library District is going to go after the government or our representative for earmarks to what we're trying to do, because we're well funded right now. But it was an interesting thing to hear about that. The other item to look at, and this one reason I'm always going on about grants, is that there will be a lot of federal grant money that will be teed up for special districts. Not necessarily right now in a way that sees that direct flow from the money by the government to the special districts, but it will start to engineer itself that way. So that's something for us to keep our eye on. I'm sorry about all of I know there's a randomness to what I'm doing here, but there was also a randomness to the meeting that I'm following right along. But suffice it to say that there's a huge lobbying effort right now on behalf of special districts to get some of that money from the Jobs Act, and we'll see how that goes. There was also a speaker named Paul Mitchell, who's the president of Redistricting Partners, about redistricting. And in our case, we're going to be districting, for the first time. But he said a lot of the same things that Camila has been reporting on in her reports about how that process should go. And cutting to looking at page 54 now to the last 4 bullets on the list of things that he talked about. This is advice to him about the way that institutions should handle their districting work. Don't consider incumbents or candidates in your districting. That's number 1. Don't draw a district for a political party advantage, which I think we all were trying to do that anyway. Hold hearings and encourage public engagement, especially early in the process, and post your information on the website. He had a lot of interesting factoids about redistricting and how it operates. It has to be very close in terms of the persons represented in each district. When it comes to federal districting, it has to be less accurate in terms of the evenness or the population numbers when it comes to smaller community government institutions. So it was an interesting conversation. Again, there's a junction, it seems like, with a lot of what we've been talking about so far. And in a minute, I'm going to talk just briefly about Senate Bill 594 in California, which is, I don't quite understand, but it talks about deadlines to establish districts based on the way that the census is shifted. There's also a take action page on the CSDA website, and we've already participated in that about a month or so ago, in which we signed a letter that will be sent to the governor that asks for a special district consideration when it comes to the money that will be allocated to different organizations. So we're on that, and there are other opportunities for us if we feel so inclined that I can talk about it at future meetings. But right now, I think having done that, having signed our name to that, I think is the best thing that we can do in the short term. And then there was a series of bills that were endorsed by the California Special District Association. And I've got them listed here, SB 219, it starts with, and then to 594, et cetera. I'm not going to, in the interest of time, I'm not going to comment on all of them, except to say that Senate Bill 594, which is the Glazer bill, appears to try to establish a uniform deadline to establish or redraw their districts 180 days prior to their general election in 2022. And it sounds like you all might know about this already, those of you on the districting committee, so I won't go too deep into that, but it is a bill that got a support recommendation from CSDA, and we can watch that as it goes forward. So again, there's a bit of a scattershot report and a long one, and I apologize for that, but I can tell you that there's really a lot going on in behalf of special districts across the country. And it was stuff that I did not know about, like an iceberg. You can see part of it, but you can't see a lot of it floating below the water. That's sort of what's going on right now. So I could go on, but I'm not going to. I'll stop and take any questions that you might have about that.
Does Camila or Katie, do you guys have any clarification on that bill? Because like my just reading of that summary is that if we move to 2024, we wouldn't be in compliance with that bill.
That's not totally true. Yeah. So basically, what we're doing is we're following the law extra hard, basically. So the deadline that we have to get new maps to LA County is May 12th, which is compliant with a 180-day deadline. However, what we're telling LA County is we're not going to use these maps for the 2022 election. We're going to use them for the 2024 cycle. The reason that we're still trying to get everything done by May 12th is on the super unlikely, very rare chance that there is some kind of legal challenge where some plaintiff says, we feel like the Altadena Library District is, in violation of the California Voting Rights Act. We would have them on file. So we could use them in 2022 if we were compelled by a legal challenge to do so. We wouldn't have to then do that 90-day turnaround of like figuring it out and drawing the maps and everything. Everything we've looked at says like there's absolutely zero chance that that's going to happen, because the majority of these lawsuits that get filed are because of the financial upside to the, sort of guaranteed damages that exist. And we've talked about this before. So the risk is, it's not zero, but it's as close to zero as you can get for this kind of thing. But we figured better safe than sorry. And that way we would have them on file with Utley County. We would be compliant with that 180-day run up to the 22 cycle, even though the 2022 elections would still take place on an at-large basis. And we would switch to those new maps in 24, if that makes sense.
Yes, cool.
Makes good sense. I know when I saw the report, Terry, it was a really great report. It was super interesting, actually, especially the information on redistricting. I quickly did math to figure out, like, yeah, we'll meet that deadline for sure, even if we're not utilizing it for, gonna hold an election for that redistricting in the 2022 election.
I'll echo Camila's sentiments. I thought it was a super interesting report, and it also made me wonder, like, were there any slides or handouts from that talk by Paul Mitchell? Because he's super legit redistricting guy, and if there were like take homes, I would love to get hold of those for our committee so we could take a look at them.
Well, there won't be, unfortunately, from this meeting, but there's 2 more days that whole program will be uploaded on the CSBA website, and it's available,
Okay.
but only for the attendees. So if those of you that are really interested in taking a look at this, I'm telling you, it was a dynamite presentation by everybody. You can still get in there, but you'd have to pay the $100 or something to, to crack the code and get in there and see this stuff. I asked them specifically about that. There was also a couple of really good, and I should mention this while I'm thinking about it, a couple of really good speakers from the Environmental Protection Agency and from FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Administration, for District 9, which encompasses us. And they talked in detail about some of the things that are happening in those 2 areas. And the reason I bring it up is that one of the woman from EPA, her name was Paula, I want to say Jacobson, I asked a question online about whether, when she talked about what the EPA has been doing and the fact that their 50th anniversary just occurred in 2020, would there be a role for special district libraries to promote what the EPA has been doing in special programs and so on? She thought that was a great idea. And I thought, oh my gosh, maybe that's a way that we can get the administrators for District 9 to come and talk at the Altadena Library, but I haven't made a move on that yet.
That's cool. I love it. Yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting, and maybe, Nikki or Diego, we can follow up with this online. It sounds like there's a lot of really good information. It'd be great for us to, be able to capture and possibly refer back to. I mean, certainly, Terry, your report is terrific, but it sounds like there are also a lot of really interesting specifics that it might be good to be able to look back at some point in the future. So maybe we can figure out how to do that. So we have a little legislative days library of content to go back to should we need it. But yeah, thank you so much for such a comprehensive report. I agree, really interesting and a lot of really, really good information to have. Any other questions for Terry on his governmental relations report? Okay, thank you so much. Rushmore, we've got your report from the foundation meeting on page 56 of the package. Anything you'd like to add to what Bridget said earlier?
I mean, Bridget pretty well covered all of the salient points. I mean, again, congratulations and thank them for their continued support, but they're not resting on their laurels. They continue to do their outreach. They did their first appeal, sent out their first appeal letter in April. Another one's going out this month as well, and planning, of course, for the Altadena, and as she mentioned, her donor reception event. So continuing to cultivate, more support for the foundation, and ultimately it benefits us. So, I mean, but like I said, Bridget pretty well covered it all.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Camila, anything you want to add for the friends? I know their meeting's coming up, so probably after that would make more sense.
Right, yes.
Okay, perfect. All right. Any trustee reports at this time? I think our collective report is we've been doing a lot of committee work. All right, then let us move, unless anybody would like to request a recess, which we can certainly accommodate. Okay, done. Let's do it. So it's 6:47. Shall we give it 10 minutes, 5 minutes? Okay. Then let's come back at let's say 6:55. How about that? And we'll resume with the second half of our agenda then. So we will hold a brief recess at 6:48 and we will reconvene at 6:55. All right, it is 6:55. So if I could ask everybody to rejoin us. Jason, do we have you with us?
The host isn't letting me restart my video, apparently. Thank you, host.
There we go. All
Sorry
right.
about that.
So we are resuming at 6:56 p.m. And we come now to the new business portion of our agenda. And first up is item 8A, which is the review and approval of bond underwriting services. We've got an RFP for that. So Nikki, would you like to speak to that item?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening again. So as my report stated, we signed a professional services agreement with our municipal advisory firm on May 3rd, Urban Futures. So shortly thereafter, Nicole and I met with Doug to talk about next steps and timeline and all of that, and became very clear that the next step is bringing on a bond underwriter to assist with the process. So I worked with Doug to use our template, which definitely makes things much easier now, let me tell you, to develop the scope as well as the cost sheet. So he reviewed that, sent it back to me with his edits, and then we presented that to the CFD committee on May the 12th, and they approved and recommend that we bring it to the full board. If it is approved tonight, we're going to post it tomorrow with a closing date of June the 8th. There is a meeting scheduled for tomorrow, a special meeting with the CFD committee where we'll review the scoring criteria and have this an open, transparent process as well. So we're recommending that the board approve our RFP for bond underwriter so we can post it. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions on this?
Woohoo!
I had a question, which is sort of more of a procedural, I guess, or technical question. I think the RFP looks great, but I noted in section 1.20 that it requires the bond underwriter to file Form 700, which of course makes complete sense that they would have to disclose any, financial interest that they would have that would be in conflict or would have kind of any impact. Do we have a sense, perhaps from our municipal advisor or from our Bond and Disclosure Council, of who the organizations and agents thereof are who would need to do Form 700s? You know what I mean? Like, is it just the underwriter? Is it also, it occurred to me that there could be plenty of folks who kind of fit into that category. And it would be interesting to know if we have a list of who those people might be.
Yeah, I'm not sure. That's definitely something I'd have to ask Doug and get back to you with.
Okay, it's not specific to this RFP. I'm delighted to see it in here, but it did occur to me that I hadn't seen it before, or if it was in other ones previously, I had not noticed it.
Yeah, it's actually, it's part of the template. So
yeah,
but it's a good question.
Because we're going to be issuing plenty of these.
Right. Yeah, because it seems to me to be pretty loose, like the making or participation in the making of decisions which may foreseeably have a material effect. Like that could be a lot of people. Okay. Well, like I said, not specific to this RFP, sort of more a general administrative question about these things going forward. Are there questions specific to this RFP? Or discussion or anything? Okay, perfect. Then let me look at the thing to make sure I got the motion right. That being the case, I would ask for a motion to approve the RFP to hire a bond underwriter as it appears in your board package.
I'll move.
Okay, perfect. Do I hear a motion? Do I hear a second?
Second it.
All right, thank you. Motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion on this item?
I had a quick question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, please.
Nikki, you said that it's going to be posted tomorrow, and then the deadline is the 8th. Do things usually move quickly? Like when people will be sending in proposals pretty rapidly?
Yeah, that was based on the recommendation by our municipal advisor to post for 2 weeks. I believe he'll provide, email addresses for companies he's probably worked with in the past that will include with the BidNet when it goes out and promotes to all of the services that provide that, as well as people that he recommends that we reach out to. But his recommendation was 2 weeks.
Okay.
Great question. Any further questions or discussion on this item? Okay, hearing none, the motion's been made and seconded, so we'll proceed to a roll call vote. Trustee Andrews.
Aye.
Trustee Capel.
Aye.
Trustee Cervantes.
Aye.
Trustee Wilkerson.
Aye.
And an aye vote for me. Perfect. So that is approved. Fantastic. Well, since we're on a roll, let's move on to our next RFP, which is the review and approval of a community facilities district administration service provider. Nikki, would you like to talk about this one a little bit?
So again, very same process as before. We definitely need to bring on, in terms of the bond issuance, you need your CFD administration firm to help you with your special tax tables and things like that. So again, this consultant will work as part of the bond issuance process, but then in addition to that, will serve as our CFD administrator. So one example of the things that they would manage are the calls that we're getting about the special tax lien. Right now, NBS, who is our special tax assessment firm for the parcel tax we currently have, has been fielding those calls, but technically it should be our CFD administration firm. They're also going to oversee the process of notifying the public about the low income exemption and notifying any non-property. Okay, so property owners that don't have an Altadena address have to be notified a separate way. So the point I'm trying to make is this RFP will be to hire the CFD administration firm. And that would be the firm that we continue to work with each year to help us with the tax assessments and all of that we would take to the board. And the way that our professional services agreement is written is that, we can break our contract with them, but technically it would be for a 3-year term. And then we would revisit extending that or going out for RFP again. So again, the bond underwriter is going to help us through the bond issuance process. This firm would actually be with us indefinitely is basically how I would put it. So again, we would post tomorrow with a closing date of June 8th. I think there's pretty much standard firms that apply. We were told we'll probably get like between 7 and 10. And I'm happy to answer any other questions you might have.
This sounds like we could end up in kind of a similar situation with the bound council. It's like a situation like NBS is probably going to apply, and it would have to be make sure we do our due diligence as far as the clarity of the 2 different contracts kind of thing.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, the scope of work is quite a bit more. That's on page 91 and 92 of your package. And again, I worked closely with Doug from Urban Futures to put this together, as well as develop the scoring criteria, which we'll work with the CFD committee on.
I've got a quick question about I want to revisit what you said about the term of the agreement. So section 1.15 says it's 3 years with the option to renew for 2 additional 1-year periods. So the maximum term of this agreement could be 5 years, correct? Not, so what you said, sort of it could go on indefinitely. Would we have to then re-bid and re-sign every 5 years? Or, I mean, the way it's written seems great. I don't think we should contract with anybody indefinitely. But I guess what I'm thinking of is, sort of the overlap between the parcel tax administration services that NBS provides and the expiry of that into, the services component of the Measure Z funding and that transition, I would want to make sure that we had a special tax administration firm on board that covered that period. And it seems like a 5-year contract would expire at exactly the same time that that transition was happening,
Mhm.
which could be concerning or could be fine as long as we plan for it. But I wanted to know if there was if you could clarify that.
Yeah, I think the professional services agreement says something different. So we will definitely need to clarify.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. If you give me a minute, I can look.
Okay. Scroll down.
Yeah, term number 5, this agreement shall become effective and will continue in effect for 5 years unless terminated earlier.
So that says the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Got a no cause out, basically. You can fire them.
Yeah.
At any time.
Mm-hmm. But it tells me that in 5 years we would have to go back out.
We would have to go back out. Okay. Which again, I think is fine. I just want to like think about that vis-a-vis the expiry of the Measure A personal tax and how that might impact things, because presumably there would be a complex transition with the beginning of the assessment of the additional services component. I don't totally understand how all of that works mechanically on the tax assessment side. Like I know I understand how the architecture of the revenue works, but in terms of the actual assessment collection, all of that stuff,
Yeah.
it would be good to know. So it doesn't, again, I'm not sure that any of this material affects this RFP,
Mhm.
but certainly something to think about as we go forward.
Yeah. Okay.
Other questions on the CFD administrator RFP? I do have another question on section 3.1 scope of work. So all of this makes sense, but what I don't see is anything, and maybe I'm not noticing it. Anything public facing beyond respond to property owner calls regarding the CFD. So if, for example, there were some sort of notice regarding the special tax lien or low income exemptions, or, things that might have a public facing component, certainly I would imagine the municipal advisor would work on that with the district, but what would be the relationship between the municipal advisor and the CFD administrator? Or is that something that they would just figure out in real time?
Well, I mean, I know we've talked to NBS, who's doing the special tax assessment for us right now, about like generating postcards so that we're notifying all of the property owners of the special tax lien before it hits the tax rolls next year. I think that falls in their scope. I don't see that very clearly spelled out.
Yeah, I guess I'm just sort of wondering about the community facing stuff, because there's a lot of stuff about, sort of all the fulfilling all the statutory requirements, which obviously is very important. And it just says sort of other items as required. So again, I'm sure that municipal advisors have a lot more experience with this sort of thing. So if they felt like that was sufficient to cover the kind of needs we might have, then I'm good, but I did just want to flag it.
Okay. I will ask Doug about it, because I don't know that besides taking phone calls, there's been like, and presenting to the board as necessary for the special tax each year, a public facing side of the work that MBS does for us. So I think we need to get clarification on that too.
Okay.
Okay.
None of that is dispositive to me for this RFP. It just is something it would be good to understand sort of as we're thinking about information flow and scopes of work among various folks doing various tasks. Anything else on this RFP? Okay, then I would ask for a motion to approve the RFP for a Community Facilities District Administration Services. Oh, Terry, you're so moving, but you're so muted.
Yeah, I said it, you just didn't hear it.
I did. I knew it in my heart. Say it one more time for the record. Just say it one more time for the tape.
Sorry, I didn't hear that last part. Yes,
Yeah.
I move that we so moved.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
I'll second.
All right. Fabulous. All right. Motion and a second. Any further discussion on this item? Okay, hearing none, we'll proceed to a roll call vote. Trustee Andrews.
Aye.
Trustee Capel.
Aye.
Trustee Cervantes.
Aye.
Trustee Wilkerson.
Aye.
And I vote for me. Perfect. All right, thank you very much. So that is sorted. We move on now to item 8C, which is the review of the district's lost and found policy. I'm guessing that perhaps Victor, you might be speaking to that item.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, so we are bringing forward today another policy that we did not currently have a lost and found policy. And while the possessions of individuals coming into our libraries is their responsibility, we wanted to have a consistent way of managing situations where items are left behind. So that is the policy that I have presented to you all, and I'm open for questions if you have any.
Any
I have a
questions on this? Go ahead, yeah, Jason, please.
I was just wondering practically the first point about if something's unclaimed for 14 days, like what does that mean? Like what, I guess historically, like what have we done with that kind of stuff? Do we just then take it and donate it, or like how does that function, I guess?
Yeah, so normally we have held on to materials in the past that have been left behind, and the normal thing would be to label it with the date and the information on where it was found, and then we would hold on to it. But there wasn't really a formal process in place for discarding those materials. So you would have a basket of things that had been left behind for a really long time in some cases, and so we just want to standardize that, and as much as possible, when it's possible and appropriate to donate materials such as clothing, we would. But we also want to be cognizant of the fact that we don't necessarily always have the resources to wash or take care of items that are not in good condition. Those would be disposed of instead. And whenever there's any kind of unsanitary element to the materials that are left behind, we would also dispose of those immediately.
I have just sort of a curiosity question. So basically, if I mess up and I forgot something at the library and it gets found, then they'll hang on. You guys will hang on to it for 2 weeks, and then it goes away. But what is a large unattended item that will be disposed of 24 hours after being found? Like what might I leave that gets chucked within 24 hours?
That would be like a large suitcase or something like that.
Okay.
A much larger item that would not be something that we could store for that amount of time.
Okay, that's the distinction. Got it. So it's something that it's not practical to actually hang up, like a bicycle or something.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, I'll only forget small things.
I also had a curious question. Let me go back to the note. One of the comments says that, or the instructions, that if there's like a weapon or chemicals that the patrons should report that to the staff? And then what will you all do with that? Like if someone leaves a gun or a knife in the library, do you, the patron will report it, but then will you all like call the police and have them come pick it up, or?
Yeah, we would call for sheriff at that point. And we do have, I don't know if we always emphasize this, but we do have a portion of the policy that is just procedural as well, where we go through in more detail in terms of how staff will handle these specific situations as well. But we're only sharing the policy portion with you all.
Got it. Okay, that made sense, because I was like, well, what are they going to do with this? Should they touch the gun? I don't think so. What if someone left it there after, committing a crime? Or so
good points.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. Where are our forensic investigators? CSI Altadena. Okay. Any other questions for Victor on this? I think most of us are just really curious as to where everything ends up. Okay, hearing none, then I will ask for a motion to approve. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, no, go ahead.
Do you have my wallet there? I've lost it and it's been a week and I don't know where it is. And I did go into the library a week ago, so I'm because I'm sure you all would have called me, but yeah.
I'll have to look for it. You'll have to provide me with a detailed description. We'll look for it for sure. Thank you.
Gotta call the sheriff. Gotta take all the wallets to the sheriff's station. Okay. Okay, so do I hear a motion to approve the lost and found policy?
So moved.
Okay, do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All right, motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion on this item? All right, hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote. Trustee Andrews.
Aye.
Trustee Capel.
Aye.
Trustee Cervantes.
Aye.
Trustee Wilkerson.
Aye.
And I vote for me. Thank you so much. And thank you, Victor, and everybody who's continuing to bring us policy updates month after month. I know we're working our way through all the policies, so always good to see those on the agenda. All right, next up is item 8D, which is a resolution, which is the mechanism by which we update our board policies every so often. Nikki, what's your preference? I can speak to this, you can speak to this, Diego can speak to this.
Whatever your preference is, he's able to speak if you want him to.
Okay, Diego, you wanna talk us through this one?
Sure. So in the last, there's a couple reasons why we're presenting a resolution to you all today. One of the reasons is because maybe 1 or 2 meetings ago, you all updated the government liaison's duties to include voting on the board behalf in terms of like representation in other commissions or groups that we are involved in. But as we saw that, we also went through the board policies and we went through to see what can we update that made sense to make sure that we're in alignment with either new guidance from the state, especially for social media use, since that's become a more popular or more used thing as a form of communication, as well as updating some language to make sure that we are following and implementing the true intent of the policies. And then, for example, one of the changes was for our not assistant director, district director, it's our assistant library director position. So that's something that we'll want to change that title, making it correct. But we now have one, the district has one. And so it makes sense for them as part of the job duties, that's already part of their job description to be the next person in line in terms of who is responsible for operations at the library. So I can go into detail for each of the specific line items, or we can go ahead and leave it as is. And then if you all have any questions, I can answer those as well. So whichever your preference is.
And you all have a redlined copy of the policies in your board package, so you can see the specific changes or amendments or additions or deletions that were made, and we can speak, of course, to any of those. So any questions on these? Always good to read the board policies. Always a fun time.
I had a quick question about,
Yeah.
just because it's our committee, the redistricting. There was a section that said, so basically we're going to have to edit this after we complete the redistricting policy or process again, right?
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. That's exactly
that
right.
was it.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. And these policies do have a built-in update system that every 3 years after their most recent approval, that they be formally reviewed if they haven't been. And it's a little bit less than 3 years since we did them last in 2019. So we're a little bit under the 3-year mark, but it's fine. Jerry, please go ahead.
I had on the government liaisons one.
Yeah.
I remember, we did the amendment, we changed that a little bit, but we still had a vote on whether or not we wanted to add our name to the CSBA letter.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not, is that still the process that I've got as a government liaisons person? I would sign something or endorse something, but I would bring it to the board first. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think the kind of distinction would be when, for example, like there are, elections for a LAFCO or our CSDA rep or whatever, that this empowers you to make statements, on behalf of the board for those. So you don't have to bring all of those forward for a vote. But I think that, sort of as is expressed elsewhere in the board policies, that if there is, how do I say this? If there's an expression of maybe a political or a policy position that the board is taking, that would need to come to the full board for adoption. So I think the distinction would be between, like, are we taking a position on a policy, or is it a sort of regular and routine mechanic of some sort of function that the library district is a constituent part of. Does that make sense?
Sure, yeah, it does. That's fine.
Okay. Which we can, if you feel like that would be helpful language to be more specific about, we can. But I think that's the intent anyway.
Yeah, that clarifies it for me, and
okay,
that'll do the trick as far as I'm concerned. If you want to put it in writing somehow, that's fine too. But that works for me.
Yeah, I think it's basically covered, because it sort of says, like, hey, no individual trustee can make a policy statement, on behalf of the whole board. That's something the board has to vote on. So I think it's pretty much covered. I think it's an important conversation to have, but I think the policy basically does that. So Diego, you mentioned, and you're absolutely correct, that we would need to amend the policies on page 126 of the package. It's assistant library director, not assistant district director. Is that correct?
That's correct. So if you all are ready for a motion, it would be something like we approve or we resolve with the amendment to change the assistant district director to the actual title of assistant library director.
Yep, that's right. Okay, well, that's a pretty easy fix. Any other questions or comments on the board policies?
I think in terms of process, once you all resolve or approve, if you choose to tonight, we would just print out with the correction, and we'll ask Jason as our secretary of the board to stop by to make an actual signature. And I believe yours as well, Katie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. Okay, well, if there's no further discussion, then I would ask for a motion to adopt resolution 2021-01 with the amendment as specified previously, namely that we adjust the wording to correctly reflect the org chart such that assistant district director is adjusted to assistant library director. So do I hear a motion to that effect?
I'll move.
Okay, motion's been made. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All right, motion's been made and properly seconded. Any further debate or discussion on this item? Hearing none, we'll proceed to a roll call vote. Trustee Andrews.
Aye.
Trustee Capel.
Aye.
Trustee Cervantes.
Aye.
Trustee Wilkerson.
Aye.
And an aye vote from me. All right, thank you very much. So yeah, Diego, just let us know when you've got that corrected version, and we can set up a time for, I'm sure, for Jason and myself to swing by and put a signature to that. All right, moving onward, we come now to item 8E, which is the review and approval of the purchase of additional services from Paychex, who are currently our payroll and human resources service provider. You'll see that staff report and the associated documentation beginning on page 151 of your board package. And Nikki, would you like to? Yeah, I was like, is it Nikki? Is it Nicole? Is it, who is it? It's Nikki because she's on screen. So Nikki, would you like to speak to that?
All right, thank you. So over the past 18 months, I've worked closely with Nicole, our administrative services manager, on managing our human resources functions in-house and identifying the most time and cost-effective ways of addressing these human resources related tasks and issues. Although we have made many improvements to both policies and some of our processes, there is still a lot of HR related tasks that we could use additional help with. As you know, we presented to the board about our new payroll and timekeeping system, Paychex, that Nicole transitioned us to at your April board meeting. We transferred over to them at the beginning of April. They also offer human resources solutions, and we became aware of these additional services during our onboarding process with Paychex. And thus far, I've been highly satisfied, not only with the platform, but with their timely and knowledgeable support. Some of these additional services include recruiting and onboarding, customized learning and performance management that includes a library of standard trainings, as well as standardized forms that could be easily adapted for our use. We would also have access to a dedicated Society for Human Resources, so SHRM, certified professional to assist us with any immediate human resources related needs at a fraction of our attorney's fees. This would have been especially helpful as we navigated COVID. But who knows what we'll experience in the future. And if we can have someone on call to run things by, I know that will be beneficial to both Nicole and I. They also offer benefits administration with the option of a health spending account, which is something that we're hoping to integrate in the next fiscal year for all active employees' health benefits. So overall, this would add an additional per pay period cost of $422.75, which would be a $10,991 fiscal impact for the full year. And we recommend that the board authorize me to contract with Paychex for additional human resources solutions. And I'm happy to answer any other questions you may have. We did put the proposal from Paychex in the package that shows the very extensive amount of extra services that they will be able to provide to us.
Any questions for Nikki on this?
Makes sense to me.
Yep.
It actually doesn't sound like all that much money for the services that you get here. It's pretty good.
Definitely.
Yeah, that was my thought too.
Yeah. I was sort of interested in, this has, again, nothing to do with anything. It's sort of a curiosity question. I noticed that they have like a job posting option, and it looks like it's only for Indeed, and you get a $200 credit. and there's all these conditions that you have to, is that something that we would ever be able to take advantage of, or because we're always posting to very particular kind of library and library services boards, would that not be applicable? It was interesting to me as a service, and I was curious if that might be something we could take advantage of, or maybe not so much.
Yeah, I definitely think when we met with our consultant with Paychecks, that's something we would explore, because it doesn't hurt to have more exposure to get job postings out to. Yes, we use Calyx and other sites through like CLA or ALA, but yeah, it's provided as part of their service. So I definitely think it's something we would take advantage of.
I think it's great, especially because we've had to pay specifically to do some of those job postings in the past. I think that's a great advantage.
Much cheaper than government jobs.
Very much the case. Yes, that's right. Any other questions for Nikki about this proposal? Okay, then I would ask for a motion authorizing the district director to move forward in contracting with Paychecks for human resources solutions.
So moved.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion on this item? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote. Trustee Andrews.
Aye.
Trustee Capel.
Aye.
Trustee Cervantes.
Aye.
Trustee Wilkerson.
Aye.
And an aye vote for me. All right, very good. Thank you so much. Okay, so that brings us now to item 8F, the review of our proposed fiscal year 2021-2022 budget. So let's dive right in. I know the budget committee has done a lot of work on this. So Rushmore, would you like to speak to it, or do you want to have Nicole brief us?
No, I mean, I covered the high level earlier in the meeting, so I think Nicole can get into some of the specifics and open up to questions. But I think they did a really good job in the, allocating resources based on the priorities.
Terrific. All right, then Nicole, I'll hand it to you, please.
Great, thank you. Would it be helpful to have it up on the screen, or do you guys just want me to kind of go through my report?
Let's go through the report, and then if there are particular questions about particular line items, maybe we can throw those up on the screen.
Okay, perfect. Then I'll just go through the report. So we put this draft budget together in consultation with Cindy Byram and Ian Berg of Eide Bailey. It includes requests from all district department heads for programming and other operational needs, and we've adjusted some of them based on budgetary allowances. It also includes requests from budget committee members for the breakdown of staffing allocations and costs, as Rushmore mentioned, as well as adjustments we made for staffing the mobile library unit and potential Sunday open hours. So I'll just go through this quickly. We did have to adjust that addition to reserves line after we received an proposed invoice from SDRMA for our general liability and our actual invoice for workers' comp. So that did adjust our budget numbers a little bit. I'll go into that later. The transfer in from other funds accounts for expected reimbursements for all CFD related expenses that are prepaid by the district. And then CFD proceeds is yet to be determined, as bonds have not yet been issued. For donations and grants, our anticipated income decreases by $2,000 for the foundation. The Friends of the Library does reflect a decrease of $13,000 from last year due to their current inability to host their large book sales. Our literacy services line item actually increases by about $2,800 though, and that number is final. It is from California Library Literacy Services. Fines and fees, almost all accounts in this category have been increased since last fiscal year in anticipation of our further reopening to the public. We did have to slash a lot of those accounts due to our closure. For interest income and other revenues, County of LA has been decreased to reflect current downturn in interest rates. Film rental revenue has actually been increased to $15,000 as filming has resumed and our facilities are once again in high demand. As of this current month, we're actually at about $17,000 in film rental revenue for this fiscal year. So we're anticipating a continuation of that for next. Property taxes and assessments. All property tax income accounts except homeowners exemption see an overall increase of 2% per the county assessor. Then we move on to expenses. So for salaries and wages, we show an increase in salaried and hourly of 5% and 13% respectively. These figures include a 2% cost of living adjustment for all staff, as well as anticipated adjustments to pay based on an updated classification and compensation assessment for 2 management level positions. It also includes the addition of a full-time benefited library assistant to support mobile library unit service and our ability to have open hours on Sundays. For payroll taxes and benefits on line 39, payroll taxes sees an increase based on the proposed increase to salaries and wages. Health insurance has been increased to reflect a proposed addition of $100 per month per active employee to a health reimbursement account, as Nikki mentioned. We hope to make that effective January 1st, 2022, so that has been included in this fiscal year's budget. All other benefits see an increase due to anticipated premium increases on January 1st, 2022. Workers' compensation actually decreases from last fiscal year based on the invoice we received from SDRMA on May 18th, so that's exciting. CalPERS retirement, Classic has been increased after we hired 2 Classic staff members this fiscal year, and then PEPRA was increased due to the addition of a full-time librarian and the proposed library assistant. PERS unfunded was increased based on our actual valuation by CalPERS. Operating expenses, line 57. Advertising and marketing was increased by $500 for an anticipated increase in marketing materials to support the mobile library unit. Payroll fees was increased based on the district's agreement with Paychex. County tax collection fees was increased based on expected increase in tax income. For our general liability and our earthquake insurance, those will both need to be adjusted once we receive final numbers from SDRMA and a quote from our broker for earthquake insurance. We did receive an anticipated invoice from SDRMA of $61,100. Staff costs and professional development, all accounts in this section were increased in anticipation of expanded in-person training opportunities and the necessary travel that will require in the coming fiscal year. Utilities, most accounts in this section were increased in anticipation of holding open hours on Sundays. Other operating expenses were adjusted based on actual or anticipated spending. Professional services, line 98. Audit and financial consulting was decreased for general operating expenses. However, $15,000 was added to CFD expenses. Architectural and engineering was removed from our general operating budget and will be added to our CFD budget. Consultants other was decreased to accommodate minimal operational consulting work for the upcoming fiscal year. Information technology, line 103. Technology consulting was increased by $17,000. $7,000 of which is allocated to E-rate consulting. We use a consultant for our E-rate funding for our internet service. The remainder is requested to hire an on-call technology consultant to provide services when our IT manager is not available. Technology equipment was increased by $10,000 to replace end-of-life public 3D printers, purchase new filament for those printers, as well as new public laptops. Technology maintenance fees increased by $6,500 for additional mobile hotspot service. Library materials, line 112. Cataloging expenses has been eliminated due to a restructuring of our contracts and service with 2 of our primary vendors, OCLC and Baker and Taylor. Books, audio CDs, DVDs, and video games and periodicals have all been decreased to allocate more funds to electronic resources and our library of things. Downloadables has been increased due to increased demand for e-content in the wake of COVID-19. Library of Things has been increased in anticipation of further reopening and increased circulation of physical items. Mobile library collection has been added for materials purchased for our mobile library unit with an initial budget of $5,000. And purchase suggestions has been added for materials purchased at patron recommendation. These items previously came out of the general materials budget. Facilities, grounds, and maintenance, line 124, all accounts have been adjusted based on actual and anticipated spending. For programming, line 129, there is an overall increase to expenditures in anticipation of further reopening and the implementation of our mobile library unit. Capital expenditures, line 142, equipment, furniture, fixtures, and structures and improvements have both been decreased to address any potential emergencies. Any other capital expenditures will appear in the capital expenditure / CFD budget once bonds have been issued. CFD bond expenses, line 146. These accounts have all been created to address upcoming expenses related to the bond issuance, CFD administration, and project management work to be done in the upcoming fiscal year. Other accounts related to capital expenses and CFD work will be added as needed. Fiscal impact, the above changes result in an overall addition to reserves of $27,900, and our recommendation is that you review and approve our draft budget.
Okay, I'd like to open the floor for questions, either holistic or on any particular line item. I'll kick us off real quick. So that overall addition to reserves of basically 28,000, is that the case even with the elevated cost of the quote from SDRMA and earthquake insurance, or do we imagine that that would basically obviate that?
I don't anticipate it will alter it significantly. We did budget fairly high for both of those accounts. You know, and workers' comp came in actually under what we were expecting. So I'm hopeful that they'll be very close to what we budgeted, or maybe even a little bit under, hopefully not too much over.
Okay. Other questions?
Can I just say how awesome it is to hear that we're in a place to budget opening hours on Sundays? That's just, I mean, I think we shut down on Sundays like, what, more than a decade ago, I think?
It was 2008 after the last recession, yeah. And it's something that the community has been asking for a really long time. So yeah, we're definitely excited to be able to potentially offer that next fiscal year.
And then I had a question to Nicole about the structure of the P&L that we have here. Now, you've basically taken just the CFD expenses, we don't know what those are completely yet, or the revenues, and you've embedded them in the same sheet that we use for P&L. And for some reason, I don't know why, I thought that maybe we would be having the CFD have its sort of standalone financials, but according to the folks you're working with, I guess that doesn't need to happen, right?
No, so they've presented us with a couple of example budgets, and this is the way that most other agencies that separate out their capital and grants from their operating funds tend to do it. That way you still see every single fund on the same sheet.
Okay, great. Just would add a question about that formatting.
I've got a question about the cool charts that appear on page 170 and 171. So I guess my big question is the cost by department chart. If I were a layperson looking at this, I would go, why don't we spend any money on books? Like, how come we spend so much money on administration? I guess where I'm confused is like, this is the breakdown of staffing costs by department, correct? Not like percentages of operating budget. Is that accurate?
Yes, correct. This is just staffing.
Okay. So I think it might be worth specifying that, because otherwise it kind of looks like that's what the entire library budget is. Although it would be interesting to see, and obviously not, necessary for right this minute, but it would be interesting to see some visualizations of our budget broken out by operating categories. I think that would be instructive.
No, I think that's a great idea. I am working on a budget sheet that is a little more simplified and easier to read. It'll, be broken out into maybe larger categories, and it will kind of explain where the funding comes from and what it's primarily allocated to, so that, any community member would be able to look at it and know exactly where the money's coming from and where it's going.
Yeah, perfect. Love it. Love an infographic. Any other questions on the budget? Yes, Terry, go ahead, please.
Looking at salaries and wages, you show an increase of 5% and 13% on the salary and hourly. And I know it's hard to prognosticate that particular one, having not really discussed it or anything yet, but was there a point in time last year or the year before where we were settling in on a recommendation for, the rate that was set in, I want to say April was the rate that we used to set salaries, to set COLA increases, maybe last year or the year before. And I kind of thought, this is sort of off the subject, I guess, of the structure, but I kind of thought that we were going to use the same month every year going forward. Is that still true of what our baseline would be for raises and stuff?
No, that's a good question. So what we've typically used is the LA County Consumer Price Index for the month of April. That's kind of what you're referring to.
Okay.
But right now it's only 1.1%, which isn't really, a great number to offer the staff. So we generally don't recommend a COLA that is below 2%.
Okay. So that'll be a floating, you use a floating method basically to going forward to find out which rate seems the best for that sort of thing. It could be a little higher than April in any given year. Is that sort of where we're heading?
April it tends to be the baseline, yes, but if it's below 2%, 2% is usually the threshold that we always go by.
Okay.
And Nicole, this is Nikki. In the past, it's typically been much higher than 2, right? I think LA County usually falls in the 3 to 4% range.
Yeah, well, not for 2020, but for 2019, for April, it was actually 3.3.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I got one more, sorry.
No, don't apologize.
That is, I remember talking to SVRMA about our workers' comp insurance, and had gone through the roof there a year or two ago. And I said, well, what is that because of, we had a settlement agreement, as everybody knows, with the former employee and so on. Is it because of things like that? We spent more than we should have. I said, nope, it's completely due to the number of workers' comp incidents we have in the pipeline and how we worked our way through that. So it was nice to see this go down, which tells me that workers' comp is a little easier to manage right now. But is there any math that goes into open workers' comp issues when it comes to this particular line item? I guess I'm asking if you feel like you forecast it pretty well based on what you know now.
I think so. I mean, we confer with our CPAs to come up with that number, but it's basically just based on the previous year. We did anticipate it would go down because we have not had any claims within the last 2 to 3 years.
All right, great, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? I mean, I had a question about anticipated revenue and the escalator on that. So I know we've talked in the past about when we might expect to see some kind of impact from COVID potentially on property tax revenues. And it sounds like the county is saying, no, everything looks good. They're saying that we expect to see that 2% increase. Is there any sense from them as to potential long-term effects that we might want to just have in the back of our mind?
This is still a fairly conservative increase at 2%. We tend to increase by 2% every year. That's just how the market usually goes up, is that 2% increase. They're anticipating that any effects wouldn't be seen until 2 or more years out. So potentially 2022, 2023 is when we would need to start considering that loss in property tax revenue, or at least no increase in property tax revenue, and budget a little more conservatively.
And last year we projected a flat rate, correct?
We did, yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, certainly I want to thank the budget committee and the staff and all the departments who I know work really, really hard to come up with these numbers, and we get to see the end product, but this is a very complex process with a lot of moving parts. So if there's no further discussion, then I would ask for a motion to approve the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget as it appears in our agenda.
I move that we approve the fiscal 21-22 budget as it appears on our agenda.
Okay, thank you so much. Do I hear a second?
My comment, actually, real quick, is good
Oh,
job.
sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Good job. It looks terrific, and I can tell there's a lot of work that went into this.
I'll second.
All right, motion's been made and properly seconded. Any other debate or discussion on this item? All right, hearing none, we'll proceed to a roll call vote. Trustee Andrews.
Aye.
Trustee Capel.
Aye.
Trustee Cervantes.
Aye.
Trustee Wilkerson. Oh, you're
All right, there it goes. Aye.
perfect. And an I vote from me. All right, very good. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who worked so hard to put our budget together. Really appreciate it. All right, we've got two remaining items, both of which are informational items, so no further business to vote on this evening. Our first informational item is an update on our recently restored George Gardner Simon's painting, which we had appraised. So, Nikki, would you like to speak to that?
Sure. So as you are all aware, last year we hired Camila Corbella of LA Art Labs to restore our wonderful painting by George Gardner Simons. The painting had not been appraised since June of 2002, at which point it was appraised at $95,000. Nicole had been referred to through a contact with the California Arts Club to Stacy Roman, who works for the International Fine Art Appraisers, to come out and do an appraisal on the painting. His full report is in the board package, which I'm sure you guys have read through. He did call me because the appraisal dropped by $20,000 compared to its last time it was appraised, and wanted to explain that. He let me know that many art pieces have dropped substantially in the last 5 years, and largely because the people collecting range pretty much from 30 to 50 years old and aren't collecting the same things that they were 20 years ago, I guess. He also said the pandemic has had an effect on the value of paintings and art, as well as compared to Gardner Simon's other paintings, this one's quite unique. Most of his other work is, from what he described, landscapes, but have much more color. They're oceans and other things. So it's not a typical piece by his. He said that the significance of this is its historic nature, and being that it's like Millard, Canyon, which is right next to us. So keep in mind that this estimate is for insurance purposes only. What we could actually sell the painting for is probably substantially less than $75,000, but we want to make sure that we update our insurance policy to accurately reflect this new appraisal. So we were pretty bummed that it appraised less, but we now have an accurate appraisal, and he did suggest that we get it appraised every 5 years moving forward. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thanks, COVID.
Yeah. Pandemic.
The gift that keeps on giving.
Did that price decrease get into our financials for the first time here, Nicole? I noticed that number was a little lower than it normally is.
Oh, I don't know that Nicole's still here.
Oh, okay.
You mean that we built it into our policy?
Built it into our
Yeah, I don't know if we already got that built in, being that we got this appraisal late in April. So I don't know that that's actually reflected in the insurance quote right now.
All right. Well, it's in the best
We
place.
definitely will update it.
It's in the best place it could be, a historical piece for the Altadena Library. So that's good.
And a beautifully restored piece as well.
It looks much, much better.
Looks killer. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions on this item? Good to know. Good to get it appraised. We'll see how it does, but these things do shift over time as well. So, okay, good. Then our last informational item is about the LAFCO budget. I don't know that we need to spend a ton of time on this, but Diego, do you want to summarize?
Of course.
What our friends at LAFCO are telling us.
Yes, and like you mentioned, it's an informational item, so not a lot of action on your part, but it's just a matter of transparency. So LAFCO is the local agency formation commission, and for the County of LA, they provided their annual budget, which is part of their processes in terms of transparency for who they serve. And the purpose of LAFCO is to help with ensuring basically district lines, municipalities, things like that. So when we do the redistricting, they will be definitely involved in that process. And as you see in the report, there's not really much change from last year. It's just a matter of informing their constituents. And as a special district, we are one. And I can entertain any questions, but that's basically the reason why you're being presented with this budget, is that we are constituents of LAFCO.
So do we pay like some kind of per capita or some kind of membership, or is that like a separate LA County property tax thing that funds them?
The mechanism that funds LAFCO is through the state. So the state will basically, from our tax dollars, so whatever we pay to the state gets distributed to LAFCO based on the number of special districts, municipalities, things like that they are in charge of.
Okay.
So it's not in our budget necessarily, but it's in our budget as part of a tax that we do.
Cool.
Any other thoughts, questions?
All right, fair enough. I think everything under governance we've pretty much covered. The one thing that you will be seeing in June, I think, is maybe some further guidance on some of those committee report templates like we discussed tonight. So if you have thoughts or you have preferences or feedback on any of that, please, reach out to Diego or myself or Nikki, and we can try to incorporate that into some templating. Item 10, announcements and planning, no correspondence that I'm aware of. This is the time in our agenda where if you have an item you would like included on a future agenda, you can voice that preference now, or as always, you can just let Diego or Nikki or myself know and we can incorporate it. But if there are no specific future agenda items, then I will say thank you so much to everybody. We had a big agenda tonight, big board package. So thank you to everybody for their hard work in putting that together. Thank you to all of my colleagues for, as always, your questions and your careful oversight of all these items. And unless there is any objection, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Seconded.
All right, motion's been made and seconded. Any objection? Hearing none, I will declare us adjourned at 7:58 p.m. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Katie.
Stay safe, everyone.